Hey, it's Becky. Welcome back to another guest speaker, guest interview with me, Becky from A Better Way to Homeschool. I am super excited about today's guest because we're going to be talking about kids in my range of the universe. We're going to be talking about teenagers and specifically why introducing our teens to business is not only a good idea, but it's not as hard as we think it is, and it's going to just transform their universe. So, ladies, I would like to introduce you to my friend Abby with what is your website? It's 41 more, right?
It is the number 4onemore.com. Yep.
41more.com. I always want to add another word in there when I'm telling people about your website. I met Abby a while ago, kind of like a fly on the wall. So I'm a big watch people and kind of glean and like steal or appropriate their best tips and tricks. And I fell in love with Abby in the Homeschool Moms online conference this last spring. And what I didn't have time to go to all the workshops, but I thought, okay, I just need to find one golden nugget out of this workshop. And then I will feel like not only did I not waste my time, but that I'll get my money's worth. And Abby, it was one of your workshops that I listened to, and I fell in love with not only your heart, but the way that you teach in such a systematic, clear way. I'm like, thank you. There is a God. She can just walk me through quickly. So I fell in love with you though.
That is sweet because you were so encouraging too. I wondered, is it worth my time doing a workshop? And then you were so encouraging. So thank you for that.
Oh, it was great. And then as I've dabbled in and looked at your site and gone through and just participated in some of the things that you've done, I've never been disappointed. I always walk away going, yes, okay, Abby's going to be there. Okay, so we're here now. And this has been kind of an adventurous day, still chicken broth in my universe and big thunderstorms in your universe. But life is real. And I don't think that life gets more real than when you're surrounded by teenagers. So before we jump into teens and business, I was hoping that you would tell us a little bit about you, a little bit about your blog, and then how you started to dabble in this whole universe of teenagers. And I have my note. If you see me look down, it's because I'm taking notes.
Sure. So I was a teacher of middle schoolers for several years before I had kids. So I love that group. I think a lot of people love them or hate them, right? So they're either scared to death of that group or whatever. But I love the middle-aged years. It was the best. I taught them social studies in public school classroom before I had kids. So I kind of think that's where my passion came from for that age group. But started homeschooling my 4 little boys over 11 years ago. They were this little group of friends, and I couldn't think of separating them, sending them off to school, right? So kind of like your world with all the boys. So we started homeschooling and have been doing it. And then my blog is called 41 More because we started an adoption process actually in 2010. And so my blog was called Making Room for One More because we had the 4 boys. We stuck the 4 on there. And our little girl came home not until 2015, but she's number 5 and she's our little girl on the end of 4 big brothers. So, I started blogging actually about adopting, but then once we adopted, I was like, okay, there's nothing else to write about, this is done. And then I transitioned to really getting serious about helping homeschoolers and blogging about our homeschool journey. So that's kind of my background a little bit.
And I did not know that. I forgot that you're a mom of all boys too. So that's we're populating the universe with great solid men. I love it.
Yeah.
How did you then start? Now I love kids too. And I agree with you. I was freaked out by middle schoolers for a while. And I actually thought, okay, I can teach littles and I can teach older kids, but that weird in between scared me to death. It's where my homeschool journey began, where I co-taught for 3 years. I taught 5th and 6th grade. And then it was funny when we decided to homeschool, that's where our oldest fit in. So I did 5th grade in sixth grade 3 years in a row, and then suddenly was at the table with my fifth grader. And I thought, okay, God, you're so funny that you would equip. I got to do fifth grade 3 times for practice before I did it.
Yeah.
So
Right.
why teenagers? So this whole, we're going to be talking about business. How old are your kids? How old are your older boys?
So my oldest boys are 11th grade, 10th grade, 9th grade. They're like stair steps. And then I have a 6th grader this year. And then our daughter is 1st grade.
Okay. How fun. Well, that's really cool. So how why teen and business? How did this start to happen?
I was thinking about this the other night, and I thought, I'm kind of making the things that I would have loved as a kid. Honestly, I was an entrepreneur. I'm a pianist, and I took lessons my whole life. Well, when I was a teenager, I started my own piano studio, and people came to me as a teenager teaching as a high school student teaching piano. So I look back and I'm like, yeah, I was kind of always entrepreneurial. And I think if there had been an Etsy or those kind of things, I would have been right on that. So I think the idea of creating your own business, I think it's awesome, but why should the adults be the only ones to have the fun and learn the skills? So,
right. And our boys, let's see, my boys are 14 to 27, 26, 27. And so they've always had entrepreneurial things going, where they're either pet sitters or they have their lawn business. I remember my 21-year-old had wanted to, he had this opportunity to go on a ship sailing for a week to study marine biology. And it came down to and we are those mean parents that make our kids work for things. And so he said, I need $300 to go on this boat in 10 days. And I said, well, how are you going to do that?
Right.
And I said, you have $300 in 10 days. That means you need to make this much money every day. And he's like, because I was having surgery or something weird. And he took a deep breath and he goes, challenge accepted. And when he turned in his money, he dumped out the change and the dollar bills on the counter. The gal behind the desk was like, you rock, because I can tell that it was your hard work and your spirit and your passion that got you on this boat. And so
what did he do to earn his money?
He did a couple things. He got a picture of the sailing vessel. It was called the Tolley-Moore. It's now retired, but he went around the neighborhood door to door with a picture of the Tolley-Moore saying, I'm working my way to go on this week-long educational sailing expedition on this ship, the Tolley-Moore. Do you have any odd jobs or work that you have that you would like for me to do? And if they did, he would work. And if they didn't, he said, do you have any spare change that you would like to help donate? Just even quarters, nickels, or pennies. And so he got these massive yard work jobs, and then also came with a whole big jug of pennies, nickels, quarters, and everybody loved it because he was organized. He had his little thing. He had his list of skills that he could do for them, and it was great. So now all of our boys have always been, they're entrepreneurial in the sweat zone. So they are the yard, they're the neighborhood yard boys and cleaning off roofs and gutters and leaves and such. So, but that's not all that's not all that our kids can do. So sometimes we think of our kids, and this is why I'm so thrilled that you're on, because I had always thought that kids could do things like babysit, which is fantastic. Babysit and cut grass and watch the neighbor's dog. But I hadn't expanded my brain to include the things of today. So, so as far as why I think it's so important, I have some reasons why I think kids should have their own businesses, but what do you think about that?
Yeah. And as you were talking about your kids doing all this lawn work, some of us don't live, we are in a very rural area where it's hard to have the neighbors to go do the yard work or whatever, because you'd have to drive and take your own, it's just more complicated. So doing things online is actually cool because you could live anywhere and do them online. So that's kind of a neat perk, right?
Yes.
But as far as why teens should do this, they're going to totally stand out from their peers, right? Because they are not learning these skills for the most part in most public schools.
Right.
We went to the eye doctor like last year, and my one son was working through my podcast course. I was having my own kids try my things.
Right.
And the eye doctor was like, so what are you doing in school? What grade are you in? Of course, they ask them always, right? And then they're like, oh, I'm homeschooled. And he's like, oh, what are you learning? And he said, oh, I'm working on learning how to podcast. And this guy was like, the eye doctor, he was amazed. And his wife's a teacher at the public school. He was almost jealous. He was like, oh, I wish we could teach that in the public school. Our kids are really getting opportunities that their peers aren't getting. So it's really cool in that way. They're going to stand out. Their resumes and the skills they're going to learn are marketable, right? So that's just one point.
And I love the online about my youngest is going to be 14. So when he was 9, he was sitting next to me as I was making printables, because I make printables and I sell them on like sites like Teachers That Pay Teachers. And he was 9. He's like, I want to do that. And so we took one afternoon and he created his own little snowman packet, and he's made like $80 on that so far.
Right.
But although that doesn't seem like a lot of money for a 4 or 5 hour investment at 9, is a big deal. Yes. But then he's walked away with marketable skills.
Right.
He knows how to manipulate and make all the graphics and all that stuff. So real world life skills.
Definitely.
Right? So tell us what you got. So, because you not only teach kids how to build businesses, but you actually have the ability for us to have our kids take businesses. So, and I want to show everybody, Abby, I didn't get a chance because of thunderstorms and chicken broth spills. In the comments, there are links to all sorts of things. So there's brainstorming ideas, classes, links. We'll talk about them all through here. But everybody that comes, you can click and you can download that sheet or those links. The very last one will link you to my blog that has all of the expert interviews. And there's a spot in there where you can ask for all the goodies, and all of the links that Abby's talking about today are in the download sheet today. So grab that because you're going to want these for your teens. There's something magic that happens when you find something your kids want to do, like make some money. And then you're able to build amazing skill sets on top of that desire to fill up their little checkbooks. So I love it. So, talk to me. I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to let you take it away.
Okay. Sure. Well, and I was also going to mention a great thing about businesses for kids is it takes them from this passive learner to active, right? There are so many courses where our kids are just this like sponge and they're just sitting there getting all the facts. And it can be a low level learning experience because it's all about regurgitating facts or information. But when they're running a business, they actually have to use it, right? It's this higher level of using their knowledge, this higher level thinking. It's actually applying what they know. So that's the cool thing about a business. So like if you're going to start an Etsy shop or you're going to start a podcast, you can't just know the information. You actually have to show that you can use it. And I read this illustration in a book once about like, can you imagine if we taught our kids how to ride a bike by lecturing them and having them, diagram the parts of a bike. And then like at the end, they passed the test. They knew what a bike did. They could explain it. But yet you said, can you ride that bike? And they can't ride it. Well, what's the good of it? So if you don't know how to use what you're learning, have you really learned it? I don't know, so that's the cool thing about business. They're not just learning business finances or learning organization skills. They actually have to put it into practice. So I think that's a big perk for kids being entrepreneurs, while they're in our homes and while we can help them because they're not all naturally organized. They're not all naturally going to be good at all of this, right?
Right. Well, and I would love for you, for the purpose of everybody's time and stuff, to focus on these two very different, but they have overlapping things that kids need to know. But if you could focus on Etsy and podcasts, because Etsy has more of the crafty, touchy, I'm making things versus the podcasts have, hey, I know stuff, or I know people that know stuff.
Yeah.
And I want to, so one is you're making things, selling. The other is communication.
Yes.
So I would love for you to share.
Sure.
So why don't you talk about, pick your start wherever. But.
Okay, sure. So the selling on Etsy masterclass for teens, when we started that adoption in 2010, it cost a lot of money. And I said, I need extra money. And I am crafty. Like I enjoy making handmade things. So I heard about this platform called Etsy and I thought I'm going to try it out. Well, in the first year, I made $11,000 on Etsy, which is crazy. So it's a very, once you get your foot in the door, you understand how it works. I mean, there are billions of people, maybe millions. I don't know the number. Billions, millions, something big. And there's a lot of customers looking for stuff on Etsy. So if you know how to get started, you know, the best practices, your teens can set up an Etsy store. And of course, we know it's handmade items. That's a big one. But there are also, you can sell vintage. So if you have teens that love going to yard sales and thrift stores, want to flip stuff, maybe grandma has stuff she wants to get rid of, someone else wants those vintage items, you can sell vintage. You can also sell digital. So some of your students who are making things for Teachers Pay Teachers, they could also put them on the Etsy platform or use those skills and create, other things that people are looking for as far as printables, right? People buy all the time. They buy artwork for their homeschool room, or they buy planners, or, all these kind of digital products. And then I think the other category would be supplies. So you want to be a supplier. So you could buy things on clearance, craft supplies, and then resell them on Etsy. So those are kind of the ways, things you could sell. And in my course, I basically take your teens step by step through everything, screenshots, videos, at your own pace. But I really recommend that parents use this for the transcript and count it as credit. And how you would do that is just keep track of your hours, right? So like 120 to 150 hours is usually one high school credit. And this could be anything from entrepreneurship to I wrote down, let me see, like visual arts, industrial arts, home economics. If you're doing sewing, if your projects are sewing, like there's so many ways to use this. So,
well, and you're the one that introduced me to that idea that thinking outside of the box, as soon as you put a chunk of time into learning something, it just makes so much more sense to include that as part of homeschooling. Because if your kid is building an Etsy store, if they're making stuff and procuring supplies and creating a budget and spreadsheet, marketing and selling, there's so much overlap. It's fantastic. Now you have a free brainstorm sheet about, so it's in that, it's in the links, ladies, or in the download. So either way. Okay, so Etsy. Now I'm not seeing any questions or anything so far. If they pop through, Abby, I will see them first, and then I will pop them up for you.
Sure.
So Etsy, how long does it take to go through your class?
That's a great question. I mean, it's at your own pace. So, I mean, I've had some people sit down in a day or two and they're like, okay, we're done. We open the shop. It's how quick you are. Some people already have ideas and are already further along. So, going through the course isn't going to probably take you a year, right? But the actual implementing everything and getting a profitable Etsy shop, that might take a year. So the course is not going to take a year, but it's there. You can come back to it. And the cool thing is we have a closed Facebook group for everyone who's enrolled. So if the teens or the parents want to jump on there and ask me questions, I can help them through, because the worst thing is to be on a platform like Etsy and then as the parent be stuck and say, my kid's stuck, what do I do? They can always ask me and I can help them through. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And don't you think this is the kind of thing that you could, if you were both willing, you could do this together as like parent and child? I know there's a lot of moms that would love to start an Etsy store. So I love when there's classes geared for teens, because that means I can understand the material too.
Yes. I know Etsy has a minors policy, which probably a lot of these companies do, where if you're under 18, your parents have to kind of be on the shop with you. So there are rules like that. Yep.
Teachers Pay Teachers is the same way. So you have to be 18 in order to sell. Okay. So Etsy, so hands-on crafty stuff. I never thought of the idea of flipping things. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
So yard sales, estate sales, all those things. Digital, I know I've seen those before. Clip art. So if you're a graphic artist or
Yeah.
all those things. So lots of ideas.
Yes.
And then what about podcasts? So that's such a different animal. How did you go from how did you go from being crafty mom to, hey, I'm going to get a nice fancy microphone?
I know, right? I think it was just the part of my trying to grow my reach with homeschool moms. So I had a blog, and then I thought, well, podcasting, let me try this out. I listen to a ton of podcasts. So I am a podcast animal. Like, I don't want to do anything where I'm not also learning. I don't want to waste my time cooking dinner. I need to be listening while I'm cooking dinner. So I devour podcasts. So I thought, well, hey, that's not that hard. It's almost like you're talking to your friend and you're chatting and you're talking about this one topic. I thought, I'm going to look into it. So I don't know. I started a podcast because it looked fun. And honestly, it's a great medium because when you hear someone's voice, you kind of connect with them on a different level than just reading their writing. So I thought, I guess I just took my passion and I thought, well, this is awesome for homeschoolers too, right? Because the guys especially, or the girls that are not crafty, that are like, no way, I'm not getting a hot glue gun out. They might love the idea that they can get a microphone and work on their computer. That's just a whole nother passion for a whole nother segment of our kids. So yeah, the podcast launch for teens is still in the beta, although I did technically finish it today. So it's done. It should all be there. But I'm going to leave it open for the month of August at the beta price and let as many people as want to go through it. And I'm going to, if there's gaps, I'll add to it. But, anyway, it's the same thing. It's just a step-by-step working through how do you launch an actual podcast to the world. So I think that's a really fun elective because, like you said, it's not the hands-on necessarily of making things. Now it's communication skills, interviewing, or, telling other people's stories, right? So it's kind of cool.
I love it. I was just flipping through my phone. Every now and again, I hand my kids my phone and I say, go take pictures.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a neat thing to see what kids see. And I was flipping through and I saw my 15-year-old had taken many pictures of spiders and assassin bugs and just all these insects. And I was just telling him today, I noticed that as far back as I can remember, you've been mesmerized by these things. Why? And he starts just flowing. And I kind of think that the podcast class would be really good for, not necessarily that it should be about insects, but but it could be.
Yeah.
And you take something that you're interested in, and then as a kid, taking that passion and figuring out how to just break it into a topic and deliver it. I don't know anything about podcasting except I think it's like this, only just audio.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah.
So I'm excited to look at that one. So how many what are the parts?
Yeah, modules. There are 10 modules. Yep. Okay. And I have, you're going to put links, but if parents want to just see how it's broken down as a possible, course, how many weeks and how many, what does that look like? They can download that link from you. And
it's in the descriptions. So I have it in there because I think that things like this, I'm just going to speak for the homeschool moms of the universe, that when I personally haven't done something, it makes me nervous if I can't wrap my head around it. I don't want my child to take a class to learn about something like podcasting if it's such, and I'm just being completely honest. If I can't wrap my head around, well, what is this beast? Then it's like, I don't know, that it overwhelms me.
Right.
The ability to take a peek over the wall.
Yeah, sure.
Is huge. But I think your classes are like my make and sell printables class. Don't you have the ability for people to take it for a test spin for a couple days?
Sure.
So isn't it
there's a money back guarantee. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. The money back guarantee.
Yep.
Yep.
And like yours in the Teachable in the Teachable platform, right? Like you can comment. So if you have questions for the teacher, right? So I mean, there's always that ability to say this doesn't make sense or we need help and we're stuck. So that's what's kind of cool, as opposed to taking a course that just comes to you with physical books. If you get stuck, you don't have anyone to ask, right? But online, you can always reach out to the teacher. So that's kind of a nice buff. You know, it's a nice help for parents who feel a little freaked out about, you know, letting their kids take a class that they don't know what's it entails. Yeah.
Right. Now you had okay, so talking so fast, but I'm so passionate about this. In my house, I have kids that are foaming at the bit to actually launch their businesses. I have my 17-year-old is a self-taught guitarist, and he's brilliant. He's one of those people that you kind of go, wow, that's not fair. All that talent shouldn't be bundled up into one person. But he's like, but I want to do something as a business with it, because I think it makes sense that I learn how to build a business now, an online business, so that I don't have all that overhead. And so he's like, Mom, I want to set up my business. So it's like, okay, I agree. I think it's great. Let's do it. So he's doing the brainstorming. He's in that, well, what do I want it to look like mode? Right. But it's inspiring as the kids, like, one of the amazing parts about being a homeschooler is that you can allow your child to have this space to allow a passion to boil to the surface, that then they can turn into something where they're kind of hidden behind the screen, like Etsy, where you don't have to put your face in front of a camera for Etsy.
Yes.
And so that's really good for our kids that are quietly creative.
Yeah.
Versus the ones like my son that wants to teach guitar, or somebody that would love to just sit in front of a microphone and talk.
Yes.
Those are neat. So there's different avenues for kids.
Yes.
Different things. So I think it's fantastic. I'm just wondering, I can see people are on, but I don't see any questions. So I'm wondering, have you had people where they have any kind of major, like, what are the hurdles that you've experienced so far to their kids starting a business? Have you had to jump over any of those with them?
Oh, that's a good question. You know, like not really. There have been successes, like some of the kids who went through the Etsy course, the parents were like, we did it. We set up the shop. We got some sales. Like they're seeing progress. That's kind of cool. And I haven't heard from any of my beta testers yet in the podcast course. So maybe they haven't started yet. Maybe they're waiting till the fall. So we'll see. But I also have, like, if people don't want this massive course and they want to try something that's kind of like Etsy, I have an eBay mini course, which is more like for the kids who want to go to yard sales or declutter their room and sell off all their cool stuff, right? And make money that way. That's like a very much shorter, you know, cheaper, whatever. That's a great thing for teens to, if they just want to dabble before they get into a bigger thing. So, like, I would say the Etsy and podcast, they're going to take more commitment, more time to see progress. The eBay mini course, I mean, you could declutter, the teens could declutter their room and start selling by the weekend, right? So it's going to be a little bit quicker to see some results. Yeah.
That's so there's actually, I'm thinking my boys, two of my kids went fishing with my husband, and they were in a fishing derby. They caught king salmon, these massive, beautiful fish, and they both placed in the derby. One came home with a fishing reel, like this part of the fishing pole, and that he doesn't need. And then the other one came home with the rubber, they're inflatable bumpers for a boat that we don't.
Cool.
So
they could sell them.
Like, can I sell them? And we're like, So that's cool. I'd love to see that.
Right.
Sorry, nothing feeds success as much as success.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Well, and Gail is actually she's one of my superstars in the Make and Sell Printables class. But what's really cool is to watch kids, and you were saying something like this in the beginning, where they go from being a passive learner to an active learner. There's nothing more powerful than, I mean, we can teach our kids to communicate clearly.
Right.
Because we want to know why they left the Legos all over the floor again. But it's another thing entirely to teach our kids to communicate in a way that allows them to thrive in life. Yeah. And so that's what I love most about, not most, but it lines up with my personal homeschool goals. But I think it's super powerful to get kids and their parents alike to enter into, the kids are ready. Like they want to do the Etsy stores. They want to do the podcasts. They want to start their own classes. Some of us are a little grayer, maybe not you, but me, I'm a little grayer. So some of us are like, I don't know how to do it. And that's why I love your teaching, because it's so clear. It's easy to follow. You're accessible. So if the kids have questions or whatnot, or the parents, like you said, they can reach them. Yeah. So the Etsy, that's for the crafties. The podcasts is for our chatty Cathys, or those that want to be whatever. What would the boy equivalent of that be? I don't know. So anyway, I've always heard chatty Cathy. But the podcast, you said, is fully launched, but still that first wave.
Sure. Yep.
So, and the code, so the links are over in the description or in the blog link at the bottom of the description. So to get the beta price is just the word beta.
Sure. Yep.
And then your Etsy class is, you have a special code for us so that it's 30% off. And I think I linked it over there. I can't. I'm afraid if I click onto Facebook, it'll glare at me like a microphone.
Yeah. Do you want me to say it?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Yeah. It's B2S30, like back to school, B2S30. And that will work on eBay or Etsy course. And the eBay one's already only $20 normally. So 30% off, it's like $14 to get your kids motivated to declutter their room, right?
Oh my gosh. That's way cheaper than hiring like somebody to come.
That's right. That's right.
Well, even at the full price, even at 20, because people are going to watch this later, even at that full price, if you consider what they're getting, because your classes are very affordable. I can't even remember. I think the Etsy class, the full price is like, is it 37 right now?
Well, that's the podcast. The full price podcast, 37. Yeah, it'll probably go up once it gets.
It'll absolutely.
Yep.
But the brilliance of, so say even if it was a lot higher than that, even if you slapped a 0 on the end of that, you can't buy curriculum like this out of a box that would teach your child the skills just at your local Target shop or whatever. Right. You're getting so much bang for your buck by not only equipping your child with skills that they will absolutely use, but also to give them that ability to take reins of generating an ability to provide for themselves.
Definitely. So you know what I always think of too with the podcasting, our teens are on tech, they are consumers, but what I love about the podcasting side of it is they're becoming creators, and that's like so much better. The whole world consumes tech already, right? They don't need to learn that. They know how to do that. But in order to be a creator and be on the other side of it, I mean, that's a narrow skill set that not everyone has. So I think that's kind of cool. But even, selling on Etsy, any platform, Teachers Pay Teachers, you're in the background learning how all that works. That's a valuable skill.
Very much so. And they're stepping stones. So what I love about the idea of your classes is that it sets a solid foundation for learning. Even in my Make and Sell Printables class, I've been doing that for a long time, maybe 7-8 years or something. And I just learned this last week how to do this one cool function thing. And I was like, yes, that's so and now I'm teaching the kids so that they have that skill. It's one thing to know how to do something. It's another thing to teach the other kids how to do it. So super, super cool.
Yeah, fun.
So cool. So I am not seeing questions. However, what I do know is that a lot of people might have littles in their house right now. They might be watching this and they might be thinking, well, my child's only 7.
Right.
So I didn't ask you this question in advance, but say somebody has littles. So my first piece of advice is to take their fancy smartphone and to set a reminder for like 5 years from now that will pop up and say, ooh, integrate online businesses, and to bookmark Abby's classes. But if somebody had littles, 7, 8, 9, so they're not quite ready necessarily.
Right.
If they had to pick one, so the Etsy store, the podcast, or the eBay, what would be the easiest one for them to go through, even as a younger child, to glean something, some skill that then they could build on later to grow into a business?
Well, probably eBay, because parents can work with their kids and they can do the listing. But, I was even thinking, if parents themselves are interested, I think our kids learn from looking at us. So whether or not your passion is selling online, or whether it is like being an entrepreneur in your own way, like there are plenty of ways to do it without being online, without doing Etsy or podcasting, right? But when our kids see us leaning into our passions and our desires, I mean, doesn't that excite them? And they're like, wow, my mom can do that. I can kind of do that. And I think I see some of that spark in my kids, which I think is kind of cool, because, and your boys probably see that in you, right? I mean, we have this desire and interest and this passion to do these things, and we're doing them. So I think, if you want your kids to kind of lean in toward these things, do it yourself if it's something you're interested in, right? So it doesn't have to be what we've talked about. I mean, it could be a myriad of things, right? It could be childcare. It could be baking. I mean, I have friends that are like, she homeschools and then she bakes and sells it at local stores. That's her passion, is making this sourdough bread and stuff, so she runs a business totally not online, brick and mortar, in the community. But her kids are looking and saying, wow, you're running a business, So I think anything like that is encouraging for our kids.
Very, very cool. So I think that's actually a good note to kind of wrap up. And this is the cool part, ladies. Not Abby, just don't pay attention. So Abby's so like together that every other time that I've tried to I always tell people, let's try and talk for 35 minutes to try to keep them short. And everybody else is wonderful. I love you all. But I knew Abby would be like, yeah, she's right on it. Which is a sneak. And the reason I say that is not to ditz anybody else, but to point out that that's what people will get in your classes, that I know that you're clear. I know that you're organized, and I know that your brain works in a way that builds upon each other in a logical string. And that's beautiful.
I don't want to waste anyone's time. So I'm not going to give you too much information.
I appreciate that, because we live in a society that feels like you are trying to get a sip of water with your little cup by sticking it under Niagara Falls.
Right.
And it's like you lose the cup, you forget where you are, and you get walked downstream. It's ridiculous. Okay, so in summary, just before I say goodbye to you and then close out, that is, teens can and should find some way to exercise their entrepreneurial skills in a way that taps into an area that they are either interested in, gifted in, or at least willing to step into. So whether it be a behind the scenes thing like Etsy, or whether more out in front, YouTube, there's YouTube channels where people do that. There's podcasts. I love the idea of the podcasts, because it kind of takes the fear. You can be a little self-conscious about this.
Exactly.
So podcasts are kind of a safer feeling where you can kind of hide a little bit and just focus on just the words. So I love the idea of Etsy to declutter rooms and have kids help take ownership too. Well, do I need it? Do I not need it? That kind of.
Right.
And then the coolest thing, the thing that I'm going to walk away with the most is that core truth that our kids are watching us.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we are constantly learning and growing,
Yeah.
then it flows downhill. So it cultivates an atmosphere of it's okay to not know as long as I am seeking information, seeking to build.
Because
So
isn't that why we homeschool? Is that love of learning, and we can learn anything we need to learn, right?
Yes.
And like,
No.
I didn't know about podcasting 1 year ago, but like I learned it. And so like you're teaching your kids, you can learn these things. Yeah, I think that's awesome. It's a mindset shift.
Hey, that totally reminds me that I did not write down, how do people find your podcast? I think it's the one link.
Okay.
You shared it with me?
I didn't send it. Well, they could go to my blog, and I have a menu that, a button they can click for podcasts. But if they went on any podcast, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, if they look for Homeschool with Moxie, it will come up. That's the name of the podcast. Yeah.
Homeschool with Moxie.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I'll go back in later and I will add that in. So Abby, you rock. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
So don't go away. I will be right back.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I know that a lot of you may have littles in your house, or you may have kids that have moved on and you are working on homeschooling your grands right now. But I want you to understand that this is a powerful thing that we can infuse into our kids, teaching them the skills behind the scenes to run their own business, being organized, brainstorming, chasing down the materials that are necessary for them to get their work done, trying, failing, succeeding, failing, picking up their bootstraps and carrying on. These are things that they are going to carry with them into their future. And so whether or not you do like an Etsy course or a podcast course or a make and sell printables course or an eBay course, find something that connects with your child in a way that sparks their interest, and then get them into building something that they own, that they can have ownership to, whether it be a lawn business or a craft store, whether it be a podcast where they are interviewing kids of how they survive in a world that's flooded with technology, or whether they're clearing out the garage to get rid of all the unused fill in the blank. Our kids need this. And if your kids are still little, I want to encourage you to find something that you can do as well. Something that you can model that I'm growing, I'm learning, I'm doing, so that as your kids are older, what I tell my kids is that, hey, I'm learning how to build an online business right now myself, so that I can teach you how to do it. Because wouldn't it be great if by the time you're 20, 25, that you already have an established business in place? And so, yeah, they're all in because they want to have successful businesses of their own too, and are excited to figure out what it is that makes their heart beat faster, and then to figure out, well, how can I create a viable business doing that thing? So before you go, follow the links to glance through, choose, and pick one of Abby's classes. You won't be disappointed. She's fantastic. I love her teaching style. She really is clear and to the point and easily understood. The very last link in the descriptions, I think, double check, it goes to my blog, A Better Way to Homeschool. But when you click through there, you'll get the different ideas of things that you can do with your teens that would also qualify as high school electives. Because why not kill two birds with one stone? Have your kids build something that they're passionate about, and then have it count for school at the same time. So anyway, thank you for joining us. I hope to see you guys on Monday. I have another guest coming on Monday to talk to you about something fantastic, which I forgot to peek out before. But anyway, it'll be fantastic, and we'll see you on Monday. Thanks for joining, and that's it. Love you guys. Bye.